July 2nd, 1943, Castelvetrano Airfield, Sicily. The German pilot never saw it coming. Out of the burning Mediterranean sky, a P-40 Warhawk dropped from above like a hawk on its prey. Gunfire ripped through the Focke-Wulf 190's frame, and within seconds, the fighter spiraled down in smoke and fire. At the controls sat First Lieutenant Charles B. Hall, a 22-year-old from Brazil, Indiana, the first black American pilot to bring down a German aircraft in combat. That single kill shattered a myth the Nazi command had sworn by, that men of his color could never master the skies. The swastika painted beneath Hall's cockpit would become the first of many. Over the next years, 112 enemy aircraft would fall to the same group of men the Germans would come to whisper about as Schwarze Vogelmenschen, the Black Bird Men. Inside Hitler's Reich, racial laws had already written their place in the world. Untermensch, subhuman, unfit for courage or command. But thousands of feet above Sicily, that ideology was being torn apart, one dogfight at a time. From the red soil of Tuskegee, Alabama, nearly 1,000 trained black pilots were rising, men who had fought not just to reach the front, but to be allowed to fly at all. The Luftwaffe didn't know it yet, but they were about to meet some of the most disciplined and relentless fighter pilots the U.S. ever produced. These men had trained twice as hard, been tested twice as long, and carried into combat not only their nation's mission, but the weight of a people judged unworthy by their own country. The proof would come written in numbers no propaganda could deny. 15,000 combat sorties, over 1,500 missions, 112 enemy aircraft destroyed, and a bomber escort record so clean that white commanders struggled to explain it. Each mission chipped away at a century of prejudice, until even Nazi ideologues had to face the truth. Their racial superiority was a lie. But this triumph didn't begin in battle. It began years earlier in a segregated America that refused to believe in them. In 1925, an official Army War College report coldly stated that the black man was of inferior mentality and weak in character. According to Washington, black soldiers could not handle machinery or lead in war. Yet while those reports gathered dust, a few black pioneers were already proving them wrong. Eugene Bullard, denied service at home, flew for France in World War I. Bessie Coleman, barred from U.S. flight schools, earned her license in Paris. By the 1930s, Chicago's Coffey School of Aeronautics had trained dozens of black pilots, living proof that the air belonged to no race. As war approached, voices rose. Civil rights leaders like Walter White, labor activist A. Philip Randolph, and Judge William Hastie fought endlessly for equality in the armed forces. Black newspapers, the Chicago Defender, Pittsburgh Courier, Baltimore Afro-American, asked the question the nation feared: how can America fight for democracy abroad while denying it at home? Their persistence paid off. On April 3, 1939, Congress passed Public Law 18, a small clause buried deep in government text requiring at least one flight school to train black pilots under the Civilian Pilot Training Program. It was a single door cracked open, but through it, history would take flight. It began as a reluctant concession wrapped in the old fabric of segregation, but it was at last a beginning. When Franklin D. Roosevelt sought an unprecedented third term in 1940, he needed the black vote in northern cities to secure it. On January 16, 1941, Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson announced the creation of a new unit, the 99th Pursuit Squadron, an all-black flying group. Even the announcement carried the weight of prejudice. The Army described it not as progress, but as an experiment designed to test whether African Americans were even capable of serving as combat pilots. Captain Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. knew exactly what that meant. When he led 26 pilots of the 99th Fighter Squadron to North Africa in April 1943, he carried more than command authority. He carried the expectations of an entire people. The son of America's first black general, Davis had endured 4 years of isolation at West Point. No white cadet spoke to him except on official duty. Now he led men who bore the hopes of 13 million black Americans. Each sortie a test not only of skill, but of equality itself. The 99th arrived in Tunisia, stationed at Farjuna under the 33rd Fighter Group, commanded by Colonel William W. Mamier, a man who made no effort to hide his doubts. He assigned them routine coastal patrols, missions far from the real fighting. It was a setup for failure, and when they didn't immediately distinguish themselves, he found his justification. Then came June 2, 1943, their first true combat mission, an attack on the Italian-held island of Pantelleria. As their aging P-40 Warhawks climbed toward the target, German fighters dropped from the clouds. The Tuskegee pilots held firm, protecting the bombers and keeping their formation intact. No aircraft were lost that day, but the Luftwaffe had learned something new. These men would not break. A month later, the moment that would rewrite history arrived. July 2, 1943. Charles Hall, flying his 8th mission, was escorting B-25 bombers bound to the Castelvetrano airfield in Sicily. 2 Focke-Wulf 190s dived toward the bombers. Hall saw them and turned into their path. He later recalled, "I cut between the bombers and the Germans, closed the gap, and fired a long burst. My tracers ripped through the second fighter. It rolled, dropped, and went straight into the ground." When Hall landed, the airfield exploded in cheers. Black ground crews who had endured months of mockery from white servicemen finally had an answer. Hall's victory was the first aerial kill by a black American pilot in U.S. military history. By January 1944, the 99th had been in combat for 7 months, yet Colonel Mamier filed a report branding them lacking aggressiveness and recommending their removal from combat duty. That report reached General Henry Hap Arnold, who prepared to end the experiment altogether. Then came Anzio, January 27, 1944. The Luftwaffe launched fierce raids on the Allied beachhead. 15 pilots of the 99th Squadron, flying outdated P-40s, faced a swarm of faster, newer German fighters. What happened next would silence critics forever. Over 2 days, they downed between 8 and 13 enemy planes. Captain Charles Hall added 2 more victories to his record. In 48 hours, flying inferior aircraft, they had destroyed more enemies than in 7 months of previous combat. The War Department ordered a full comparison study between the 99th and white P-40 squadrons. The results were undeniable. They performed equally well. The victory at Anzio proved that, given the chance, black pilots could match any in the world. In May 1944, the 332nd Fighter Group was formed, uniting the 99th, 100th, 301st, and 302nd Squadrons. Their orders: escort the heavy bombers of the 15th Air Force deep into Nazi Germany. At Ramatelli Airfield on the Italy's Adriatic coast, Colonel Davis gathered his men. He told them, "We cannot afford to lose bombers. Our job isn't to chase kills, it's to bring them home." That philosophy would define their legend. No matter the odds, they would never leave a bomber unguarded. By June 1944, General Nathan Twining ordered that all fighter groups adopt distinct markings for identification. The 332nd was assigned red, not just stripes or nosebands, but brilliant crimson tails. The P-51 Mustangs, with their scarlet tails, red nose cones, and bright propeller spinners, became unmistakable in the European sky. The bomber crews didn't know the men guarding them were black, only that these escorts never abandoned them. Soon, a phrase spread through the ranks of bomber squadrons: "If you can get the red tails, get them." Then came July 18, 1944, the ultimate test. Colonel Davis led 66 Mustangs to rendezvous with bombers striking the Luftwaffe base at Memmingen, Germany. The bombers were late. Davis made a fateful decision: to hold position in enemy airspace rather than retreat. When the bombers finally appeared, so did the Germans, nearly 100 fighters attacking from every direction. The Germans had begun to understand a harsh truth, that only overwhelming force might shatter the Red Tails' shield. Despite their relentless defense, The 332nd claimed between 11 and 12 enemy kills, yet 15 B-17 bombers still fell in just 20 minutes of savage air combat. 3 of the 332nd's own pilots were lost that day: Lieutenants Robert Hutton, Wellington Irving, and Alfred Brown. Critics were quick to pounce, claiming the bomber losses proved that black pilots could not endure large-scale engagements. But a deeper operational review exposed the reality. The Red Tails had entered an impossible situation. German fighters were already tearing through the bombers when they arrived. Their intervention hadn't caused a disaster, it had prevented one. By March 1945, the Luftwaffe's propeller-driven fighters were shadows of their former power. Yet Germany had one final weapon to unleash: the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. With a staggering top speed of 540 miles per hour, it could outrun every Allied aircraft in the sky. On March 24, 1945, the 332nd Fighter Group received its most dangerous order yet: escort bombers on a 1,600-mile round trip to Berlin to destroy the Daimler-Benz tank factory. Intelligence reports warned that Me-262s from Jagdgeschwader 7 would defend the target. Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. led 43 P-51 Mustangs deep into the heart of the Reich. As they neared Berlin, the skies filled with silver flashes, the largest German jet force ever assembled for a single interception. Lieutenant Roscoe Brown had studied the jet's weaknesses. He later explained, "We knew the German jets were faster, so instead of chasing them, we turned away, then cut into their blind spots." In a brief window of opportunity, Brown pulled into a 15-degree climb, firing 3 long bursts from 2,000 feet. Flames erupted. The Me-262 pilot bailed out at nearly 25,000 feet. Lieutenant Earl Lane achieved what many considered impossible, shooting down a jet from 2,000 yards using the new K-14 computing gun sight. Lieutenant Charles Brantley claimed a third jet that same day. In one mission, the Red Tails destroyed more Me-262s than most Allied fighter groups managed during the entire war. In a single afternoon, they had surpassed every previous American tally against the German jet. For their heroism, the 332nd earned a Distinguished Unit citation. Not every encounter ended in triumph. 32 Tuskegee pilots became prisoners of war, revealing the complex clash between Nazi ideology and battlefield respect. Lieutenant Alexander Jefferson was among them. On August 12, 1944, during his 19th mission, his P-51 was struck by flak while strafing radar sites over southern France. Captured and interrogated, Jefferson was stunned by how much his captors knew. He recalled, "The German officer had everything: details about Ramatelli Airfield, our squadron commanders, even my parents in Detroit. He knew my father was a teacher and my mother's maiden name. Their intelligence was frighteningly thorough." Inside Stalag Luftwaffe, Jefferson was treated no differently than other captured American officers. White POWs, many from bomber crews, often approached him with gratitude for the protection of the Red Tails. Ironically, in a Nazi prison camp, Jefferson experienced more equality among white Americans than he ever had back home. When the war ended and he returned to the United States, that illusion vanished. Segregation resumed the moment he disembarked. Even the Germans had acknowledged the Red Tails' skill, calling them the Schwarz-Vulgenmenschen, the Black Birdmen. Among American bomber crews, their reputation became legendary. These men who stared death in the face every mission didn't care about color, only survival. They began to spread their own mythology. Stories of the Red Tails' discipline, the way they wagged their wings in greeting, their tight formations, their refusal to abandon a single wounded bomber. To the bomber crews, they were not just pilots, they were guardian angels with crimson wings. The numbers told the same story. Air Force historian Dr. Daniel Hallman's research revealed that under 332nd escort, bombers lost only 27 aircraft to enemy fighters, compared to 46 for other P-51 groups in the 15th Air Force. The Redtails achieved that superior protection rate while flying some of the longest and most perilous missions of the war. By war's end, the Tuskegee Airmen had shattered every pre-war myth about black military ability. Their record spoke louder than any prejudice. 1,578 combat missions, over 15,000 sorties, 179 bomber escort operations, 311 under the 15th Air Force, 112 enemy aircraft destroyed in aerial combat. 150 more were destroyed on the ground. The Italian destroyer Ta-22 Giuseppe Missori was crippled beyond repair on June 25, 1944. And above all, a protection record unmatched. Only 27 bombers lost to enemy fighters, compared to 46 for other groups. Among their heroes stood Lee Archer, credited with 4 confirmed victories. Joseph Ellsbury, another ace, with 4 kills, including 3 FW-190s on July 12, 1944. They entered history as outcasts. They left it as legends. Edward Toppin scored 4 confirmed victories. Clarence "Lucky" Lester brought down 3 enemy planes in a single mission on July 18, 1944. Their decorations spoke volumes. 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 744 Air Medals, 14 Bronze Stars, 8 Purple Hearts, 3 Distinguished Unit Citations for the 99th Fighter Squadron, 1 for the 332nd Fighter Group. The cost was steep. 66 pilots killed in action. 32 were captured as prisoners of war. 84 lost in training or non-combat accidents. Their rise from ridicule to respect was not built on courage alone. It was the product of skill, precision, and relentless training. At Tuskegee, cadets logged 300 flying hours, a full 100 more than most white trainees. They drilled formation tactics obsessively, knowing that discipline, not daring, would decide survival. The washout rate was brutal, 60%, compared to 40% in white programs. Only the most exceptional endured, forming what Colonel Noel Parrish called a super-selected group. Their aircraft told a story of progress and perseverance. The 99th Squadron began with worn-out P-40 Warhawks, a relic of a previous era, already obsolete by the time they reached North Africa. Against German Bf-109s and FW-190s, they were outmatched in almost every metric: speed, climb, and firepower. Yet the Tuskegee pilots turned disadvantage into strategy, mastering the P-40's tighter turn radius and rugged frame to hold their ground. Everything changed in July 1944 with the arrival of the P-51 Mustang. This sleek, silver fighter represented the pinnacle of American engineering. Its Packard-built Merlin engine pushed it to 437 miles per hour. 6.50 caliber machine guns gave it deadly precision, and its range, over 1,600 miles with drop tanks, meant it could escort bombers deep into the Reich and back again. Behind every victory stood an army of unseen heroes. Of the 16,000 Tuskegee Airmen who served, fewer than 1,000 ever flew in combat. The rest, mechanics, armorers, and crew chiefs, kept the Redtails in the air with ingenuity and grit. Their base at Ramitelli in Italy was primitive, supplies scarce, spare parts hard to find. Yet their aircraft readiness equaled and sometimes surpassed that of better-equipped white units. Even the ground crews faced danger. On March 24, 1944, a German bombing raid struck Ramitelli, killing several men. Still, they worked through fire and smoke, dragging aircraft away from burning fuel depots. They refused to let the Red Tails fall silent. The air war over Europe was the ultimate test. Each B-17 Flying Fortress represented a $238,000 investment and a crew of 10 trained men. Losing even one was a strategic blow that rippled across the Allied effort. That's why escort duty mattered more than victory counts. Colonel Davis understood this perfectly. Anyone can chase a kill, he told his men. It takes discipline to stay with the bombers when the enemy runs. From that order, the Red Tails crafted a system of defense unmatched in the skies. 3 layers of protection. Close escorts weaving above the bombers, medium-range fighters intercepting attackers, and high cover ready to strike from above. It demanded absolute coordination and trust. They executed it flawlessly. But theirs was a double war, one against fascism abroad and another against racism at home. Every mission they flew defied 2 ideologies: Hitler's belief in Aryan superiority and America's own segregation. Their victories humiliated both. While black newspapers celebrated them as heroes, much of white America looked the other way. The Pittsburgh Courier's Double V campaign, victory abroad and at home, made the Tuskegee Airmen its living symbol. German intelligence knew them by name, calling the red-tailed Mustangs Schwarzvogelmenschen, the Black Bird Men. Yet back home, many Americans didn't even know they existed. The War Department had kept its achievements quiet. When victory came in Europe, celebration was mixed with uncertainty. White units are prepared for parades. The 332nd faced questions about whether they'd even have a future. The U.S. Aeronautic Forces still planned to maintain segregation, despite the evidence written in blood and courage. For years after the war, the Tuskegee story remained buried. Their heroism circulated mostly in black communities. Mainstream America forgot. Men like Lee Archer, with 4 confirmed kills, rarely spoke of it. "People didn't believe me," he once said. "A black fighter pilot had to be lying." In 1948, President Harry S. Truman changed that forever. Executive Order 9981, the integration of the U.S. military, owed much to the legacy of the Red Tails. Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., who had once led them through Berlin skies, became the first black general in the Air Force in 1954. Recognition took decades. In 2007, President George W. Bush awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to the Tuskegee Airmen. Only 300 of the original pilots were still alive to attend. Men who had waited over 60 years for the honor their courage had already earned. Their legacy is not legend. It is fact, written in numbers that no prejudice can erase. 112 enemy aircraft were destroyed in the air. 3 Me-262 jets were downed in a single mission. 150 were destroyed on the ground. 27 bombers were lost under their protection, compared to 46 for other groups. 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses were awarded to the men of the 332nd Fighter Group. Even the Germans, the Schwarzvogelmenschen, had come to respect them. Prejudice could not stand against performance. Every dogfight won, every bomber saved, every mission completed was proof carved into history that skill knows no color. Roscoe Brown, who shot down a German jet over Berlin, spoke for them all. "We didn't just fight the Germans, we fought ignorance, prejudice, and hate. And we won all 3. The Tuskegee Airmen didn't just win a war. They changed the world. They fought 3 battles, against the Luftwaffe, against Nazi ideology, and against America's own racism. They triumphed in all. Given the chance, they soared, turning mockery into respect, prejudice into belief, and enemies into witnesses to their greatness.